The shovel hit the ground before the echo of boots even reached Maeve Calder's ears. Someone was digging where no one should be digging, out on the edge of Sundown Ridge, at dusk, when honest folks hurried home, and only troublemakers lingered on the earth like ghosts. Maeve slowed her mare, watching the stranger from the shelter of a cottonwood's shadow. He worked steadily, not frantically. That was the first odd thing. The second was that he kept glancing over his shoulder, as if measuring the silence behind him, waiting for a sound he feared might appear. When he finally straightened, brushing red dirt from his coat, he noticed her watching. He froze. Not in guilt, no, Maeve knew guilt well enough to recognize it. This was something else. Bracing. Preparing. He didn't speak. He just held her gaze like a man waiting to be judged. That was her third warning sign. Maeve nudged her horse forward. "This is a private trail," she said, her voice flat as the dying light. "Folks don't dig holes out here unless they're looking for trouble." The man studied the hole at his feet, his face unreadable in the gold-orange dusk. "I wasn't searching for trouble," he answered quietly. "Just for the truth." Most men in Sundown Ridge tripped over words or swaggered till the ground tilted under them. This one did neither. He spoke as if truth were heavy and he was used to carrying it alone. Maeve didn't trust that. She scanned his saddle. New leather. Fresh supplies. The stance of someone who traveled far but didn't know these lands well enough to survive them alone. A newcomer, drawn to Sundown Ridge the way moths found lanterns, burning wings on secrets they didn't understand. "Truth won't help you much out here," Maeve said. "People in this town prefer stories they can sell." He gave a small, tired smile. That was the first soft thing about him, and Maeve disliked it instantly. Soft didn't last long in the Ridge. "I was told," he said, "that you hire out for trail work. Guiding, tracking, scouting." Maeve's jaw tightened. Whoever told him that had spoken more than they should have. "Depends who's asking." Jonah Briggs. He waited as if the name should mean something, but Maeve felt nothing stir. Newcomer, through and through. Except, there was something in the way he held himself. No confidence. Resolve. The quiet kind that didn't boast because it didn't need to. "I need a guide," Jonah continued. "Someone who knows this land and the people who want to control it. Someone who won't flinch if things get uncomfortable." That was the moment Maeve realized what he really wanted, not a guide. A witness. Someone who would see whatever he uncovered and speak the truth, no matter whose boots it crushed. "No," she said instantly. "Whatever you're hunting, I'm not interested." He watched her turn her horse, but he didn't call out or chase her. He simply said, "Maeve Calder, I'm not asking for kindness. I'm asking for honesty." Maeve stopped. The wind shifted, brushing dust past them like an old memory. She turned halfway back toward him. "I can work," she said, each word sharp as flint. "But don't expect warmth." Jonah nodded once. "I'm not looking for warmth." His eyes held something harder, something steadier. "I'm looking for what's real," he said. "Because someone in this town is lying to me about land that should belong to my family." That sentence cracked something in the air between them. Not a promise. Not a threat. A beginning, one Maeve hadn't agreed to but felt pulling her all the same. Jonah stepped away from the half-dug hole. He didn't explain it. Didn't justify it. He simply stood there, waiting, as if the next move belonged to her. The sun slid behind Sundown Ridge, leaving the last trail of gold burning along the horizon. Shadows lengthened. The world held its breath. Maeve finally exhaled. A stranger digging for truth at dusk, watching the dark as it might answer first. What kind of man did that? And what truth was dangerous enough to hide beneath Sundown Ridge? Maeve rode ahead without saying more, expecting Jonah to fall away like every other fool who came to Sundown Ridge chasing something they couldn't hold. But when she tethered her mare outside the livery to unsaddle her for the night, she heard slow, steady footsteps behind her. He'd followed. Not close. Not eager. Just present. Like a man keeping pace with his own shadow. Maeve kept her back to him as she lifted the saddle from her horse. If he wanted her help, he'd have to do more than trail her like a lost pup. "What exactly did someone lie to you about?" she asked, voice clipped. Jonah didn't answer right away. Instead, he took off his hat, dusted off the ridge dirt, and held it against his chest. A gesture of respect, or preparing himself for something heavy. "My brother," he said quietly. "They lied about where he went. Lied about why he never came back." Maeve stilled. The saddle hung in her hands a heartbeat longer than it should have. She set it aside. "Keep talking." Jonah's eyes drifted past her, toward the far edge of town where the hills rose like dark shoulders against the early night. "My family has a mining claim north of here. Not gold, iron. Nothing to make a man rich, just enough to build a living." His jaw tensed. "My brother, Levi, stayed behind to watch over it. Last month, he sent a letter saying someone was trying to force him off the land. Said men started circling the ridge, watching." Maeve already didn't like where this was going. 3 days later, Jonah continued, "I received a message from Sundown Ridge saying Levi packed up and left. Just like that. No signature on the note. No explanation." His voice dropped lower. "My brother wouldn't leave. Not without sending word. And not without a fight." Maeve crossed her arms. "People vanish out here all the time. Land disputes get ugly. Maybe he was outnumbered." Jonah shook his head. Levi knew how to handle trouble. But this wasn't just trouble. Something bigger pushed him out, or buried him. Maeve watched him for a long, silent beat. He wasn't a liar. His eyes held too much grief to be pretending. But people's grief made them blind, made them build monsters out of shadows. And yet. "Where is this claim?" she asked. Jonah hesitated, as if debating whether to trust her. Then he reached into his coat and handed her a folded map. Maeve opened it, and the world narrowed for a moment. She knew that land. Her breath thinned. Her vision sharpened. The claim lay a mile west of her childhood home. What was left of it, anyway? A patch of earth once theirs, taken after her parents refused a deal that came with hidden guns and whispered threats. Her stomach tightened, the old ache returning. She forced her voice steady. "Who told you he abandoned it?" "A clerk in town," Jonah said. "Said Levi signed off his rights. But the signature wasn't his. I'd stake my life on that. Forgery. Disappearance. Forced abandonment." Maeve folded the map, sharper than she needed to. "Why come to me?" "Because I asked around about who knows the trails. Who knows the people. Who doesn't owe favors to the ranch barons." He paused. "Your name came up every time." That didn't comfort her. Her name coming up meant someone was watching where it was spoken. Jonah stepped closer, not enough to crowd her, just enough that she could see the dust settling on his boots, the quiet steadiness in his posture. "I'm not asking for your sympathy," he said. "Just your help. Guide me to the claim. Show me what's out there. If the truth is ugly, I need to see it." Maeve didn't answer. Not immediately. She looked past him, through the open stable doors, toward the lanterns flickering along Sundown Ridge's main street. People moved like shadows, fast, secretive, careful not to be caught listening. This town didn't like truth-seekers. "You understand," Maeve said at last, "if someone forced your brother out, they won't like you coming back to test the story." "I don't expect them to." His calmness was unsettling. Not brave. Just grounded. As if he'd already accepted whatever lay ahead. Maeve exhaled slowly. Fine, she said. I'll guide you. But remember what I told you, I can work, but don't expect warmth. Jonah gave the smallest nod of relief. I don't need warmth. His eyes held something else. Something firmer. I need someone who won't lie to me. Maeve tightened her gloves, ignoring the cold twist in her chest. Truth was a dangerous thing to seek in Sundown Ridge. But more dangerous still was being dragged back into the fight she'd spent years avoiding. They left Sundown Ridge before first light, when the sky was a pale wash of gray, and the world felt hushed, as if unsure whether to wake. Maeve preferred mornings like this, quiet, empty, with nothing but hoofbeats and breath-marking time. No eyes watching. No ears listening. But Jonah rode behind her, steady as ever, and that changed the quiet in ways she couldn't ignore. He didn't speak. Didn't hum or whistle or ask pointless questions like most men trying to fill the silence. He simply rode, observing the land with that calm, unsettling focus of his. Maeve found herself glancing back more than she liked, checking if he was still there. He always was. By mid-morning, they reached dry creek beds and rock flats where only mule deer and ghosts dared wander. Maeve dismounted near a cracked trough that once fed cattle long gone from the ridge. She knelt and ran her fingers along the wooden slats. Dry. Too dry. This water line should have run a month longer, she murmured. Jonah dismounted and walked around the trough, scanning the ground. Could it have dried on its own? No, Maeve rose, brushing dust from her palms. Not unless someone helped it. She crouched again, this time following the water pipe that snaked underground. A few yards out, the earth was disturbed, boot-packed, uneven. Maeve dug her fingers into the dirt, feeling for the pipe. She found it. And the cut. A clean slice, sharp and deliberate. She stood. Jonah watched her, his expression unreadable. Cut water lines, Maeve said. Used to be a warning. First step before pushing a family off their land. Jonah didn't flinch. That happened to you? Maeve didn't answer. She didn't need to. The look she gave him said enough. Jonah crouched beside the pipe, running a fingertip along the severed edge. He examined it like a man studying scripture, noticing what wasn't said as much as what was. Boot tracks, he murmured. More than one set. Maeve pointed with her chin. Hired riders. The pattern's familiar. Jonah glanced up. Familiar how? She ignored the question and moved on, leading them farther along the dried creek bed. The land grew rougher the higher they climbed, sagebrush dragging against their boots, the air sharp with dust. Half an hour later, they found the second sign. A fence post snapped clean in half. Not from the weather. Not from age. From force. Jonah's jaw tightened. Someone wanted to make the land look abandoned. Or make staying here impossible, Maeve replied. She walked a slow circle, studying the scuffed earth. Hoof marks, but not wild horse. The precise spacing told her all she needed. 3 riders, she said. Heavy horses. Well fed. Jonah's eyes narrowed. Meaning someone with money. Maeve didn't respond, but the truth sat between them anyway. Only ranch barons kept horses like that. Jonah straightened, looking toward the distant ridge where the land rose toward his family's claim. This wasn't random. No, Maeve said. This was planned. He looked at her again, studying her face the way he studied the map, searching for unspoken details. You're thinking something you're not saying. Maeve stepped past him. I'm thinking I don't like the direction this is pointing. They continued upward. The wind changed, rolling downhill with the scent of pine and something faintly metallic, blood, old but present. Maeve slowed her horse, raising a hand for Jonah to stop. Boot prints littered the ground ahead. Some shallow, some deep, 2 sets dragging slightly, men carrying weight or a body. Maeve knelt, brushing dust aside until the heel mark showed clear. She froze. "That pattern," she whispered. Jonah knelt beside her. "You recognize it?" Maeve didn't answer. But her pulse quickened. That heel mark, star-shaped, pressed into the ground by a specific brand of custom-made boot, belonged to men she'd hoped never to cross paths with again. Men who worked for Elias Cormac, the largest ranch baron in 3 counties. Jonah watched her carefully. "Maeve, who uses boots like that?" She swallowed once, hard. "Cormac's riders." Jonah didn't curse. Didn't pale. Didn't react the way most people did when hearing that name. He simply looked toward the ridge again. "So it's him." Maeve didn't want to say it. Saying it made it real. Made the past she'd buried claw its way up again. Instead, she said, "It's too early to know." But Jonah heard what she didn't say. He mounted his horse. "Then let's get answers." Maeve hesitated before climbing onto hers. Answers cost people dearly in Sundown Ridge. And they were already stepping onto land where truth had a price written in blood. By the time they reached the high ridge, the sky had deepened into a low steel blue, the kind that made shadows stretch long and warnings settle into the bones. Jonah slowed his horse when Maeve raised her hand again. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. The remains of a camp lay scattered across a rocky shelf just below them. A cold breeze tugged at the torn canvas of a tent half-collapsed against a boulder. Cooking tins lay overturned, one dented so sharply it must have been stepped on. A saddlebag had been ripped open, its contents scattered like someone searching for something specific, and not finding it. Maeve tied off her horse and moved on foot. Jonah followed, but she felt him hold back, letting her read the ground first. Wise. This place wasn't just abandoned. It was silenced. She crouched near the fire pit. Ashes had long cooled, but a few charred sticks still held the memory of flame. Not more than 3 weeks old. Jonah stood a few feet away, staring at the tent as if he could still see the man who once slept inside it. This was Levi's camp. Maeve didn't correct him. He already knew. She scanned the dirt around the fire. Someone left in a hurry. Jonah walked toward the open saddlebag. Inside, buried beneath a shirt and a tin cup, something caught the light. He reached in and pulled out a folded sheet of paper, edges wrinkled and dirty. He held it out to Maeve without opening it. She unfolded it carefully. The paper was thin, the ink smeared at the edges, but the shape of the land drawn across it was unmistakable. A deed map. But something was wrong. Maeve traced the lines. This signature. Not Levi's. Too neat. Too controlled. A practiced forgery. Jonah stepped closer. That's what I was afraid of. She turned the page. The backside held a second sheet attached with pinholes, meant to be taken together. But the second sheet was missing. Torn away. What was on the other page? She asked. Coordinates, Jonah said quietly. Where the iron vein splits. That's what makes the claim valuable, not rich, but steady. A family could build a life on it. Maeve swallowed a bitter taste. Land that sustained families didn't interest men like Cormac unless it stood in the way of something bigger. She moved past Jonah, her eyes narrowing as she studied the scuff marks near the tent. 3 sets of boot prints overlapped Levi's lighter ones. Heavy, deep set. 2 dragging slightly, hauling something heavy. His supplies weren't taken, Maeve murmured. That means they weren't after gear. Jonah stared at the torn saddlebag. Then they were after him. Maeve didn't reply. She traced the drag marks with her fingertips, her voice tightening. They pulled him toward the east trail. Downhill. That leads back toward Cormac's grazing range, Jonah said. Maeve stopped. You know that name too well for a newcomer. Jonah didn't look at her. His eyes stayed trained on the ridge, as if it might answer. Levi wrote it once, in an older letter. Said a powerful rancher was buying up land that didn't want to be sold. Said men talked about him in whispers. I figured the name was just fear of doing the talking. Maeve let out a sharp, humorless breath. In Sundown Ridge, fear doesn't exaggerate. It understates. She walked farther out, toward a set of prints that broke away from the others. A lighter pair, running, stumbling. A trail of scuffs and half footprints leading toward a cluster of boulders. Maeve hurried ahead. Behind the rocks lay the remnants of a small leather journal, torn apart and weather-beaten. She picked up the largest fragment. Jonah appeared beside her, breath tight. Maeve flipped it open. A date. A short line written in a fast, slanted hand. They followed me again today. Same writers. If anything happens, the claim papers are hidden. The sentence stopped. Torn mid-thought. Maeve felt the wind shift, colder now. Jonah pressed a hand against the rock wall, bracing himself. He knew he was being hunted. Maeve didn't look at him. Her jaw tightened, her pulse loud. He wasn't just hunted, she said. He was cornered. Jonah swallowed hard. Why? Why go to all this trouble over a quiet iron claim? Maeve tucked the journal fragment into her coat. Her voice dropped into something low, steady, and carved from old scars. Because iron is just the surface, she said. And beneath it, is a secret someone's been stealing land to keep buried. Jonah met her eyes. What secret? Maeve stared at the torn journal, the cut water lines, the forced disappearance, patterns she knew too well. The kind, powerful men kill to protect. A silence settled between them, heavy, waiting. Then Jonah said quietly, "We keep going." Maeve didn't argue. She cinched her coat tighter, turned toward the rising ridge, and led the way. They weren't searching for a missing man anymore. They were riding straight into the heart of the reason he vanished. The wind sharpened as Maeve and Jonah pushed higher into the ridge, the trail narrowing into a cliff's edge path locals avoided even on their bravest days. The canyon opened below them, vast, jagged, and waiting for any mistake. Maeve kept her mare steady, glancing back only once to ensure Jonah followed. He did. Close enough to keep sight, far enough not to crowd her. Same quiet steadiness. Same unnerving calm. Half an hour later, Maeve pulled up abruptly. Jonah halted behind her, sensing what she had seen. The dust on the trail ahead wasn't settled. It moved faintly with the wind, a fresh disturbance. Hoof prints. Deep ones. And beside them, a strange pattern in the dirt, dragged like something long and heavy had been pulled across the narrowing ledge. Maeve dismounted, crouching low. Riders came through recently. 3, maybe 4. Jonah scanned the bluffs above. Are they headed toward us, or waiting? She didn't answer. The canyon swallowed sound in a way that made a person imagine footsteps that weren't there. Then Maeve spotted it. A broken branch perched unnaturally on the ledge's edge, balanced, too perfect, too ready to fall. Her eyes widened. Jonah, down. They both dove as rifle fire cracked from the cliff above. The bullet ricocheted off stone, showering shards across the trail. Maeve hit the ground hard, rolling behind a jut of rock. Jonah landed beside her, breath punched from his lungs. Another shot rang out, closer, controlled, deliberate. Maeve peeked upward. 3 riders, crouched among the rocks, rifles aimed down the path. She recognized the posture, the precision. Cormac's men. Her stomach twisted. Jonah dragged his pack behind the rock for cover. He kept his voice low, calm despite the danger. They followed us from the camp. Or they were waiting for anyone who got too close, Maeve muttered. A bullet shattered a stone less than an arm's length from her head. We can't stay here, Jonah said. Maeve nodded. The trail was too exposed. Staying meant dying. Their only chance lay behind them, the narrow switchback trail that wound into a steep, dangerous canyon known mostly to mountain goats and the brave or foolish. Jonah looked at her. "Lead the way." Maeve didn't argue. They sprinted back toward the horses. Bullets rained behind them, hitting ground, walls, anything but their flesh, yet close enough to feel death brushing their heels. "Ride low," Maeve shouted as she mounted. Jonah swung onto his horse, gripping the reins tight. Maeve yanked her mare around and bolted down the switchback. The horses thundered onto the narrow descent, hooves scraping stone. Jonah followed, close but not too close, always aware, always balancing space and trust. Rifle fire echoed behind them, but the canyon walls swallowed the line of sight, forcing the riders above to reposition. Maeve didn't slow. The trail grew steeper, the drop beside them sheer enough to kill with a single misstep. Jonah's horse stumbled once on the loose gravel, but Jonah leaned forward, guiding it with a calm hand. No panic. No cursing. Just focus. The man was becoming a puzzle she couldn't stop noticing. At the bottom of the switchback, the canyon opened into a narrow ravine. Maeve finally slowed the pace, letting the horses breathe. Jonah rode up beside her, his breath heavy but steady. "You all right?" she asked, not looking directly at him. "Still alive," he said. "That's something." Jonah scanned the cliffs. "They wanted us dead." That wasn't a warning. Maeve knew he was right. No. That was a message. He turned toward her. "For you. Or for me?" She didn't want to answer that. Not out loud. Not while the past clawed at her ribs like it wanted out. Instead, she said, "Cormac's men don't shoot unless ordered. And they don't miss unless they're meant to push you somewhere." Jonah stiffened. "Push us where?" Maeve studied the ravine ahead, the rising walls, the narrowing path leading deeper into territory Cormac controlled. "Into a choke point," she said. "A trap." Jonah gripped his reins tighter. "Why? Why go this far overland? What are they trying to hide?" Maeve looked at the canyon ahead, the place she'd sworn never to return. "They're not hiding land, Jonah." Her voice went quiet, flat, heavy. "They're hiding what's under it." Jonah met her eyes. No panic. Just a growing understanding that whatever lay ahead was far darker than missing brothers or stolen deeds. Maeve nudged her horse forward. The trap was set. And now they had no choice but to ride straight into it. The canyon walls tightened as Maeve and Jonah rode deeper, the sun barely touching the floor of the ravine. Light thinned. Air cooled. Even the horses sensed the change, ears flicking, muscles tense, breaths quick and alert. This part of the ridge wasn't used for travel. It was used for hiding things. Maeve slowed her mare, guiding the horse around a cluster of fallen rocks. Jonah kept pace beside her, his eyes scanning every shadow, every bend in the stone. "They drove us here on purpose," he said quietly. "Yes. To finish what they started? Maybe." Jonah exhaled slowly, steadying himself. "Then why aren't they shooting now?" Maeve didn't answer right away. She noticed the absence of echoes, of hoofbeats other than their own. No birds. No small animals. Just the hush of a place used to seeing fear carved into it. Because, Maeve said, they expect the land to do the killing for them. The ravine bent sharply left. And there, half hidden by overgrown sage and shadows, lay a man slumped against the canyon wall. Jonah reined in hard, shock tightening his face. Maeve dismounted first and approached with slow, careful steps. The man wasn't moving. His shirt was torn, his boots scuffed, his skin gray with exhaustion and pain. A gun lay nearby, unloaded. His horse, if he had one, was gone. When Maeve knelt, his eyes flickered open. Not fully, just enough to see her. Water, he rasped. Jonah handed over his canteen, and Maeve eased a small amount past the man's cracked lips. He swallowed with difficulty. Then he whispered a name that made Jonah stiffen. Briggs. Jonah dropped to his knees. You know my brother? The rider blinked slowly, focusing with effort. I rode with the crew, not by choice. They caught me leaving town with questions I shouldn't have had. Maeve's jaw tightened. Cormac's men. He managed a slow nod. They wanted me to deliver a message, to anyone looking for the claim. Jonah's voice deepened, tight with dread. What message? The man coughed, a painful, hollow sound. Stop digging. Stop asking. Because, they can't let anyone find the records. Maeve felt her pulse pound. What records? The man's eyes shifted to her. Recognition flickered, her face, her voice, her past carried rumors even this half-dead stranger had heard. The land, the deeds, the old surveys, he whispered. They forged them. Bought judges. Buried the originals. And now they plan to burn the rest. Jonah's voice cracked. Burn? Where? The rider's lips trembled. His voice fell to a raw whisper. Courthouse. Sundown Ridge, tonight. Silence dropped hard and cold. Maeve felt the world tilt. Burning records wasn't just erasing Jonah's claim, it was finishing what had begun all those years ago when her own family's deed vanished in smoke and threats. Jonah touched the man's shoulder. My brother, Levi. Did you see him? The rider swallowed, his gaze fading. He fought. Hard. Didn't give up anything. A heartbeat passed. But they took him east. Toward the cut banks. Said Cormac wanted to question him himself. Jonah's hands curled into fists. Maeve saw the grief hit him, not loud, not violent, just deep enough to change the way he breathed. She stood, scanning the canyon entrance they'd ridden through. They left him here to die, she said. The rider managed a weak, bitter smile. Didn't expect anyone to come this way. Thought the canyon would finish me. Maeve's expression didn't soften, but something in her eyes did. You held on, she said quietly. Longer than most. The man gave a faint nod, then sagged forward. Maeve checked his pulse, slow but there. Jonah rose beside her. We need to get him out. We can't, Maeve said. Not fast enough. Not with what's coming. Jonah's frustration flared. We can't leave him. We're not, Maeve said. But he can't be moved. We'll hide him in the overhang and circle back after Sundown Ridge. Jonah exhaled, battling the decision, but he understood. If the courthouse burned, every truth they needed would go up with it. Together, they lifted the man beneath a stone shelf, shaded and out of sight. Maeve left him extra water. Jonah left him his spare coat. Before stepping back, the rider gripped Maeve's wrist with surprising strength. Cormac, he whispered, won't let go, not until everyone who knows the truth is gone. Maeve met his fading gaze. Let him come, she said, voice low, carved from years of buried fury. He already took enough. Jonah mounted his horse, determination settling over him like armor. Then we ride to Sundown Ridge, he said. Maeve swung on to her mare. Not to find warmth. Not to offer hope. But to end the lie that had lived too long in their town. And to face the man who had shaped both their pasts more than either wanted to admit. The next morning dawned colorless, one of those pale, windless mornings when the world feels like it's waiting to be told what happens next. Elara stepped outside the sheriff's office with a cup of coffee and found Duke sitting on the bench, hat low, arms folded, boots crossed, like he'd been carved there overnight. He looked up. Sleep. Some. She sipped. You. Didn't. Which she'd already guessed. His eyes had that gritty, overwired look of a man who'd been thinking all night and came to no conclusions. There was a quiet between them, not uncomfortable, just heavy with what was coming. "We ride in 30 minutes, she said. Duke nodded slowly. "Figured." There was something else in his expression, something that almost looked like an apology mixed with pride. "You're different today," he added. "How so?" He tilted his head. "You're not running. Usually by now you'd be looking for a horse, a trail, or an excuse." She held his stare. "I'm done running." A ghost of a smile tugged at him. "Yeah. I reckon you are." They gathered the small posse just west of town, 3 deputies, 2 ranch hands who'd lost cattle to Flint's men, and Duke. The morning air felt tight, like it might crack instead of being warm. Elara swung onto her horse, adjusting her hat. "We find Flint's camp, we force him to pull his boys back from Dust Valley. We do this clean, and we do it fast." Deputy Harlan cleared his throat. "Sheriff, if Flint's numbers are what rumors say." "We're not talking the whole camp," she said. "Just Flint." Duke gave a low whistle. "Bold plan. Simple one. Most simple plans end bloody." She looked straight at him. "That's why you came along?" "Nah," he nudged his horse forward. "I came to make sure you don't get dead before I finish that conversation we keep avoiding." She blinked at him. He wasn't joking. Before she could answer, he clicked his horse into motion. "Let's move." Dust Valley was hotter than usual, even by mid-morning. Heat shimmered off the rocks. Sagebrush rattled dry as bones. They dismounted at the ridge overlooking Flint's hideout, a cluster of canvas tents, horses, and a few half-built shacks. Flint's men lounged around a fire, unaware of the eyes watching them. Elara squinted through the spyglass. "Flint ain't there." Duke asked, "How sure?" "I don't see his jacket. He keeps it hung on whatever chair he's using." "You trust in a man's laundry habits now?" "Trusting his ego," she said. Harlan pointed. "Tracks at the north side. Fresh ones." Elara lowered the glass. "They're moving." Flint must have taken a small group to scout ahead. Duke frowned. "Toward Twin Mesa." She stiffened. Her old home. The cabin where her father had once lived. Where Duke had found her hiding years back. "Maybe," she muttered. Duke saw the shift in her face. "Elara." "We follow." They mounted again and followed the tracks toward the narrow canyon leading toward Twin Mesa. The air cooled as cliffs rose around them. Birds scattered overhead. The trail wound like a snake, giving cover, too much cover. Halfway through the canyon, a rifle cracked. Elara's hat snapped off her head as the bullet grazed it. "Ambush!" Duke shouted. Gunfire erupted from the canyon walls. Elara pulled her horse behind a boulder, firing back at silhouettes moving above. Stone chips exploded. Horses screamed. Dust filled her throat. Duke slid beside her, firing upward. "Flint's men. Has to be." "Where's Flint?" she shouted. Another volley answered. Duke gritted his teeth. "He's close. This ain't random." He grabbed her arms suddenly, eyes fierce. "Stay behind me. I can fight." "Didn't say you couldn't," he growled. "I'm saying, don't get yourself killed before I tell you something important." She stared at him, breath catching. Another bullet hit the rock inches from her. He leaned in, voice low and raw despite the gunfire. "When this is over, I ain't going back to the life I had. And I ain't letting you walk away from me again." Before she could answer, a shadow moved above them, Flint himself. And he was aiming right at her. The streets of Sundown Ridge were quiet, deceptively calm. Smoke curled from the courthouse chimney, thin and fragile, but the air carried the sharp scent of fire. Maeve and Jonah rode in cautiously, eyes scanning for movement. The Baron's men had underestimated them, and now the trap they had planned was unraveling. Jonah tightened his grip on the reins. "Maeve, are you ready for this?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Her heart beat steadily, carved from years of fear and anger. She was ready, not for warmth, not for comfort, but for truth, for justice, for the reckoning she had avoided for far too long. The courthouse yard was chaos. Flames licked the edges of the doorframe, and men in dark coats scrambled, trying to save papers, horses, and pride. And at the center of it all, Elias Cormac barked orders like a king defending a crumbling throne. Maeve nudged her horse forward, eyes locked on him. Jonah followed, calm, steady, the anchor she had learned to rely on. The first gunshot rang out from the shadows. A hired gun, unprepared for Maeve's sudden arrival, went down without a sound. Jonah moved with her side by side, methodical, precise, their shared purpose clearer than any words. Cormac's eyes found Maeve. His smirk faltered. "You," he began, but stopped. The weight of the past, the land stolen, the families ruined, it all bore down on him in the steady, unyielding gaze of the woman he thought would never return. Maeve raised her rifle, but she didn't fire immediately. Instead, she spoke, letting the voice she had long buried cut through the smoke and chaos. "This ends today, Cormac. Every lie, every deed forged, every family you tried to crush, you lose it all." Jonah stepped forward, holding a stack of papers he had recovered from the Baron's burned safe. The records. Original deeds. Every claim you tried to steal is coming back. Cormac's men hesitated, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. The smoke, the fire, the sound of truth, they weren't prepared. Maeve and Jonah didn't wait. They moved with courage born of necessity, each shot precise, each step purposeful. Men fell back, some surrendering, others fleeing. The Baron himself tried to escape, but Jonah blocked the only exit, steady and unwavering. Maeve dismounted and approached him. No warmth, no apology, just the weight of the years he had stolen. "It's over," she said, voice like iron wrapped in velvet. Cormac's shoulders slumped. The arrogance, the power, it all drained away. Behind him, deputies moved in, securing the Baron and his men. Jonah placed a hand on Maeve's shoulder. "You didn't just help me. You helped Sundown Ridge." Maeve's gaze softened, not toward warmth, but toward acknowledgement. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it needed to be done." Jonah nodded, understanding completely. No softness, no sentimentality, just truth and courage, the kind that saves more than lives. The courthouse smoldered behind them, but the town was safe, and the land reclaimed. Maeve stood tall, stone-strong and steady, the kind of woman who didn't need warmth to be heroic. Jonah, quiet but unshakable, rode beside her. Together, they had faced fear, lies, and fire, and emerged unbroken. As the sun climbed higher, its light catching the ridge above Sundown Ridge, Maeve mounted her horse. Jonah stayed a moment longer, then climbed up beside her. No words were needed, the work, the truth, the fight, they had done it. Maeve nudged her horse forward. "Let's ride." Jonah's lips curved slightly, the faintest hint of a smile. Together. And they rode out of Sundown Ridge, not seeking warmth or comfort, but carrying honesty, courage, and the knowledge that some battles were worth every risk. The town behind them settled into a quiet that felt earned, and Maeve, steady as stone, unflinching as ever, led the way forward. Justice had a face. And today, it rode with them. Did Maeve and Jonah's courage inspire you? Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next thrilling tale from Sundown Ridge.